Roger, why do we need to then go back to the negotiating table in this matter if there is such an imbalance in the powers that we have?
Well, there are extraordinary imbalances in the relationship, and I mean, a few weeks ago, for better or worse, I wrote a blog about GERS, Government Expenditure and Revenue Scotland Statement, for which my Twitter timeline is still suffering. I can assure you that I have never met anywhere which is more interested in national income accounting than Scotland. You have turned it into a national obsession, it seems. I was a little surprised by the reaction. So I walk with a little trepidation, knowing full well that someone somewhere will have a lot to say about what follows. Look, the simple fact is that the amount that is known about Scottish taxation is very little indeed. Yeah, let's put it bluntly. Inside GERS, 25 of the 26 income figures are estimates. And as Graham Roy has said at the Fraser of Allender Institute, and he was responsible for preparing it for 7 years, they are prepared on the basis that Scotland is a mini part of the UK and the figures are simply an apportionment of the UK as a whole. So, in other words, Scotland is not an independent entity, and yet I'm sitting in what seems to me to be the Scottish Parliament, which clearly recognises that Scotland has some independence as an entity, and is being given devolved taxation powers, but is not being given the data to make decisions upon. That was the core argument that I presented. And however you look at GERS, and yes, I am quite sure that those who are tasked with preparing it do it with all good faith and with due diligence on the data they get from the ONS and elsewhere. But nobody would ever prepare the income statement for a region, a devolved country administration or whatever else on the basis of samples and statistics if you could actually collect the population data. You know, as in statistical terms, you'd always like to know the real figure, not the statistical estimate of what that might be. And if the GERS statement was so good as a basis for estimating Scottish taxation income, then the UK would use that system as a whole, but I assure you it doesn't. It actually uses the data on the amount of tax collected, which is obvious direction of travel. So if Scotland is going to get a fair deal on tax under whatever system exists, however it's framed, whatever the rules on detriment and so on, then Scotland needs the data to make decisions to see how these issues do impact upon it. And it's no good just having information on income tax, which is obviously an income tax from employment, which is obviously the one area where there now looks to be a reasonable chance of the quality of data improving, because as we're seeing, what's going on here is an arbitrage between one tax and another tax, taxes that will be subject to Scottish rates, taxes that we will not be, national insurance, corporation tax, and so on. And there, who knows, whether or not you have Scottish registered businesses or not does, of course, even potentially have impact upon the VAT collected in Scotland as well. And it could quite easily have that as well. Because if there isn't business in Scotland, there will be less VAT charged as such on a differentiated business framework in Scotland. And that does have an impact. So one of the things that you need to do if you're going to get this framework right is to actually say, for heaven's sake, can we please have the real information? And I wouldn't make this request just for Scotland. I think Wales needs it, Northern Ireland needs it. I can see good reason why you should be cooperating with colleagues in other parliaments and assemblies for that reason. Indeed, I can't actually see why the new mayor of Manchester won't want this if he's going to ask for taxing powers. It is going to be a he. I'm not being gender specific here. Why London may not want it and so on, because the data should be collected. But Scotland very definitely needs it because you have taxing powers, and at the moment you simply do not have the right information. I tell my students when I teach them about the quality of data that they're going to interpret to actually look at whether it's good information or not, and the phrase I use is CRAP. CRAP is a technical term. It stands for completely rubbish approximations, and that's what you get to assess your tax system at present.
Thank you.